I will never forget the night I almost lost my life. I am Arturo Morales from Guadalajara, Jalisco, and what I am going to tell you happened in the year 2006. Since then, every time I travel at night on the highway, I feel that same knot in my throat. I want you to hear this, to feel it with me, because if I do not tell it, it seems the darkness I saw that night will keep chasing me forever. That night I left Guadalajara around 9 at night. I had had a long day at work and decided to return home by the highway leading to Tequila, thinking it would be a peaceful trip. The fresh night air, the crickets, and the smell of wet earth gave me a sense of calm, until something changed. There was almost no traffic, only my car and the yellow line that seemed to draw a road without end. Then I saw him, a man standing in the middle of the road, as if waiting for me. His clothes were dark. I could not make out his face, but something about him made me brake sharply. My heart began beating like a drum, and a chill ran down my spine. I tried to go around him, but then I felt the world closing in. 2 more men appeared from nowhere and opened the doors of my car. Before I could scream, one grabbed my arm and the other covered my mouth. The car stopped, but not because of me, but because I was no longer in control. Everything happened so fast, I barely had time to think. They took me through roads I did not recognize. The highway disappeared, and little by little, everything around turned into a maze of darkness. Finally, we arrived in an abandoned building, far from any city. The windows were broken, the walls covered in strange graffiti, and a rancid smell, like rusty metal and rotting wood, filled the air. They made me go inside, and I immediately understood it would not be an ordinary night. Inside, the place was lit with black candles. The walls had symbols I did not recognize, and on the floor were stains I did not want to look at closely. I felt a knot in my stomach, a mix of fear and disgust. My captors forced me to kneel in the center of the room. In front of me, a tall man, with a robe falling to his feet, began reciting words in a language completely foreign to me. I could see in the distance figures moving in circles, with grotesque masks and dark robes. The air was heavy, filled with incense and something else, something I could not identify. My mind screamed to escape, to run, but I was trapped. Then I heard a sound that froze my blood, a knife being sharpened slowly. It was then that I understood the truth. They were not playing. That ritual, that ceremony, was for me. My body trembled, and I felt time slow down. Every word from the cult leader made me feel my life fading, that every breath was a borrowed gift. I tried to reason with them, to say they were mistaken, that they had confused me. But no one listened. It was as if I did not exist, as if I were only a piece in the macabre game they had prepared. And then I saw it, on an improvised altar, something covered by a dark cloth, and the shadow of what could have been a previous sacrifice. I felt vertigo, a terror I had never felt before. My heart was about to explode when I heard a different sound, the sound of sirens in the distance. One of the men looked toward the window and cursed under his breath. The police. I do not know how they knew, but in seconds everything changed. The captors began to scatter, and amid the chaos I managed to get up and run. I ran like I had never run before, feeling my legs made of lead, while my mind screamed I had to survive. When I got out of the building, the night seemed normal again. The sirens drew closer, and finally, I saw the blue and red lights illuminating the trees. The police arrived, arrested the remaining men, and I, trembling, could barely speak. They took me to a safe place and asked questions. I told everything I had seen, every symbol, every figure, every word of the ritual. But even now, years later, I cannot forget the faces of those men, the voices of the ritual, and that feeling that something dark still follows me. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the candlelight, hear that strange language, and feel that it was not just a nightmare. The cult is still out there. I will never know if anyone else was taken that night. I will never know if they plan to return. The only thing I know is that the Jalisco highway I thought I knew transformed into a path towards something that should not exist. And every time I pass by, I feel they are watching me, that their eyes follow my steps, and the night still holds secrets I do not want to discover. I never imagined that a simple fight with my parents would end up being the worst decision of my life. I am Santiago Herrera, from Oaxaca de Juarez, and this happened in the year 2007. I want you to know that every word I am going to tell is true, even if it sounds impossible. Every time I close my eyes, I can feel that smell of smoke, wet earth, and something else that has no name. That afternoon, I argued with my parents. The fight was not serious, but in my anger, I decided I had to get away from everything, that I needed to think. I took my backpack, put on my sneakers, and walked toward the outskirts of the city, seeking refuge in the forest that had always drawn my attention. I wanted to lose myself among the trees, far from the world that suffocated me. I walked for hours. The daylight faded, and soon darkness covered everything. The forest, which at first seemed calm, began to feel hostile. Every branch that cracked, every shadow that moved, seemed to be watching me. My heart raced, but I continued forward, until I heard something I could not ignore. A song, or rather a chant, coming from deep in the forest. It was hypnotic, yet disturbing, and I did not recognize the language. I followed the sound and, among the trees, saw a group of people around a bonfire. Their faces were illuminated by the flames, and they wore strange masks. They were chanting the same words I had heard, and something in their rhythm made me feel fear and fascination at the same time. My first impulse was to turn around and run, but something pushed me closer. I wanted to understand, to know what was happening. And that was a mistake. Around the bonfire, stuck in the ground, were stakes. Stakes, and on them, animal bodies. Their eyes seemed to watch me from a distance, and the smell of burning flesh churned my stomach. My mind screamed to leave, to not approach, but I was paralyzed, trapped by the scene. One of them noticed me, a tall man, with a mask that looked like a mix of bird and human, pointed at me and smiled. He invited me to come closer, and although my instinct told me to run, I could not. Curiosity mixed with terror made me take a step toward them. The ritual began. They took a small dog and placed it on one of the stakes. My body trembled. I could not look, but something forced me to watch. I will not say exactly what they did, but I can assure you that animal never moved again. The chant continued, growing louder, and I felt my legs sinking into the earth, as if the forest itself wanted to trap me. The bonfire's flames cast giant shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own, and the screams of the ritual echoed through my bones. Suddenly, one of the figures approached me. I felt their breath on my neck, and their scent, a nauseating mix of burnt herbs and something indescribable, made me want to vomit. I barely managed to step back, stumbled over a root, and fell to the ground. I do not know how, but I managed to get up and run through the trees, without looking back. The chant stayed etched in my mind, the flames and stakes chasing me with every step. I ran until I found the path that led back to the city. But even today, when I pass through that forest, I feel that something watches me. I do not know who they were, or what exactly they sought. I only know that witnessing that changed me forever. The fear I felt at night still accompanies me, and every shadow in the forest reminds me that some things are better left undiscovered. And sometimes, when the wind blows among the trees, I can swear I hear that chant, and I wonder if anyone else, like me, still sees them. I will never forget the feeling I had that afternoon. I am Emiliano Cruz from Veracruz, and this happened in the year 2002. What I experienced that night still haunts me, and although it seems impossible, I know what I am about to tell is real. Every word is a memory, a warning. I worked as a delivery person, making all kinds of deliveries. That afternoon I was assigned a strange order. I had to take a package to an address I had never heard of on the outskirts of the city, near an abandoned neighborhood. At first, I thought it was normal, but as I approached, something about the address gave me a chill. It was an old house, completely abandoned. The windows were broken, the paint peeling, and the front door hung on a single hinge. It seemed no one had entered there for years. My instinct told me to leave, not to accept the delivery. But responsibility and the need to work made me knock on the door. I got no response, only a heavy silence, a cold air that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I was about to leave when I heard a voice from inside. "Come in." It was calm, almost kind, but something in it made me shiver. Still, I pushed the door and entered. The interior was dark, with extinguished candles and furniture covered in dust. Everything seemed normal, although a sense of unease ran through me. As I moved forward, a strange, sweet, metallic smell filled the room. I could not identify it, but something told me it did not belong there. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw a tall man, with a face partially covered by a mask. He smiled at me and gestured for me to follow him further inside the house. Each step I took sank me deeper into a fear I could not describe. The shadows seemed to stretch, and every object in the room cast shapes my mind could not interpret. We reached a large room, dimly lit by black candles. There I saw things I never thought existed. Tall figures, with limbs that did not seem human, leaning over an improvised altar. Their movements were quick and mechanical, and their presence made me feel completely trapped. I tried to step back, but one of them grabbed my arm with incredible strength. His breathing was deep, as if trying to absorb my fear. Each second spent there made me feel weaker, more vulnerable. I could see how the figures seemed to study every reaction of mine, every tremor of my body. I could not understand what they wanted from me, but my instinct told me I had to leave as soon as possible. When I finally freed myself, I ran toward the door, tripped over furniture and stakes in the floor, and rushed into the fresh night air. The silence outside was a relief, but I did not feel safe for a single moment. I never knew if those figures were real or a product of my imagination, but the package I was supposed to deliver was never delivered. Since that night, I avoid passing through that neighborhood. I even avoid thinking about that house. But the worst part is that sometimes, in my dreams, I see it again, and I feel the figures are waiting for me. And I wonder, what would have happened if I had entered a second later? If I had stayed a moment longer? Even today, I have no answers, only a memory that haunts me and the certainty that there are places in Veracruz that should never be explored and people we should never meet. I never thought changing jobs could change my life, or at least that is what I believed when I accepted that position. I am Diego Ramirez from San Cristobal de las Casas, Chiapas. And what happened to me in the year 2010 still haunts me. I still do not know how I survived what I experienced, and I believe no one else should go through something like that. The offer seemed normal. A small company seeking administrative staff to handle inventory and logistics. It was a quiet, well-paid job, and the office was located in an old building with a harmless appearance in the city center. No one could imagine that behind its walls there was a world that did not belong to this plane. From the first day, I noticed strange things. My boss, Hector Valencia, was a charismatic man with a smile that inspired immediate trust, but there was something in his eyes that made me uncomfortable. He seemed to see beyond the obvious, as if he knew things I was not supposed to know. At first, everything was normal. I did my job, organized documents, checked inventories, and the atmosphere seemed relaxed. But soon the special tasks began. First, they were small instructions, filing documents in rarely used places, running unusual errands, delivering packages to people who should not receive them. Each time I completed these orders, I noticed my hands trembling, my heart pounding, and something inside me screaming that I was crossing an invisible line. One afternoon, Hector asked something different. I had to go to an isolated warehouse on the outskirts of the city and organize objects that would be used in a special ritual. I did not understand anything, but he told me it was part of the job, that it was normal. My instinct told me to leave, to quit, but necessity and fear of losing the job made me obey. The warehouse was dark, with black candles burning in the corners and symbols drawn on the floor with a red liquid I did not dare smell closely. Each step I took made the wooden floor creak, and a strange chill ran down my back. There I saw hooded figures, murmuring words in a language I could not understand, around a circle that seemed to mark a sacred and forbidden space. I tried to stay calm, telling myself that everything was part of a cultural or spiritual ritual, but the scene was too disturbing. I saw what I never wanted to see. Animals and objects suggesting previous sacrifices, candles that seemed to move on their own with a breeze that did not exist, and shadows casting impossible shapes on the walls. Hector called my name, and my heart stopped. He instructed me to place certain objects inside the circle. Each movement I made felt like my soul was being torn, as if I were participating in something that deserved punishment. My mind tried to rationalize what I was seeing, but the fear was stronger than any attempt to understand. The following weeks were a descent into hell. They made me participate more, always under the promise that it was for the good of all, that I had to obey and not question. Each ritual was more intense, more grotesque, and I felt trapped in a maze of horror and obedience. Sometimes at night, I heard the distant screams of those who did not comply, who questioned, and I understood that the sect did not forgive. One night, after an especially disturbing ritual, I decided I had to escape. My mind was exhausted, my body trembling, and every fiber of my being screamed that I could not continue. I planned my exit carefully, observing schedules, Hector's routine, and the vigilance of the other members. The tension was unbearable. A single wrong step and everything could end for me. Finally, I found a moment. When the members were focused on a chant, I ran toward the back door of the warehouse. I heard shouts behind me, but I did not dare look. I ran through alleys, through paths I barely knew, until I lost myself in the city. Fear kept me alert, but it also gave me strength. I knew that if I stopped, the sect would not let me go. Upon reaching a safe place, I told authorities what I had seen, although I knew they could not grasp the magnitude of what I narrated. Documents and evidence were scarce. They only saw objects and symbols, without understanding the intent behind them. But what I had lived could not be erased. The sensation of shadows, the smell of blood, the whispers of the ritual, all remained in my memory like an indelible scar. Since that night, paranoia accompanies me. Every shadow in the office, every strange sound in the street, makes me think someone is watching me. That Hector or his sect still seeks to regain control over me. Sometimes I dream of the rituals, of the hooded figures, and of the circle illuminated by black candles. My mind struggles to forget, but the memory of horror remains alive, reminding me that what I experienced was real. I never fully understood why I was chosen for that job, why I was dragged into something so dark, but I learned one thing. There are secrets that should not be known, places that should not be explored, and people whose power and perversity surpass all imagination. And even today, when I see an old building in Chiapas, or someone mentions rituals or sects, I feel a chill run down my spine. I wonder if Hector and his group remain active, if other innocents are being trapped in their nets, and if I will ever feel safe again. The truth is that I survived, but part of me remains there, in that dark circle, with the black candles illuminating faces I will never forget. My name is Luis Fernando Ortega, a medical student at the Autonomous University of Tamaulipas. I will never forget that night shift in 2014, the night I understood that the hospital where I studied not only healed, but hid secrets no patient should ever uncover. The silence of a hospital at night has a weight that cannot be described without trembling. Every step I took echoed through the halls, like a warning no one wanted to hear. The clock struck 2 in the morning when it all began. That night I felt something watching me, even before I arrived. The breeze drifting through the open windows seemed to whisper incomprehensible words, and a strange scent, a mix of incense and old hospital air, filled the corridors. I arrived for my night shift as usual. The fluorescent lights devoured the color from the walls, leaving everything pale and gray. Clinical smells mixed with the metallic hint of blood and soap, giving me a sense of both familiarity and unease. The corridors were empty, except for a few nurses and the night guard. Sometimes the absolute stillness surprised me. No patients crying, no monitors beeping, only the echo of my footsteps. But that night something was different. A whisper of tension floated in the air, as if the hospital was holding a secret no one was meant to uncover. For weeks, I had heard rumors among doctors and nurses, children who vanished without a trace, stories blurred between gossip and the desperate pleas of families. No one dared speak openly about it. It's just bureaucracy, some colleagues said. They're just being transferred, nothing serious, they repeated, with a strange glimmer in their eyes. But my intuition told me otherwise. Something was terribly wrong, and that night, I would find out what it was. It all began when the hospital director, Dr. Santiago Moreira, entered the on-call room with a calm that chilled my blood. He was a man of imposing presence, firm gaze, and measured smile. No one questioned his word. No one. That night, I saw him walk toward a hallway that was always locked. The door was slightly ajar, and a faint aroma of incense seeped through. Without thinking too much, I followed. What I saw made my heart race. Shadows moved around a dimly lit room filled with black candles, while someone recited words in a language I did not recognize. I decided to investigate in secret. Over the following weeks, I took notes, memorized schedules, and observed the doctors closest to Moreira. Each discovery deepened my sense that I was entangled in something far larger and darker than I could comprehend. The records of the missing children were inconsistent. Some had no admission files at all. Others showed fake diagnoses. The pattern was disturbing. All of them were under 5 years old. Fear began invading my dreams. I saw endless corridors, children calling my name, and at the end of each vision stood the same figure, Moreira, motionless, watching. Every night I woke up drenched in sweat, certain he was there, somewhere in the hospital, keeping an eye on me. One night, I decided to follow him to the ceremonial room. My breathing was shallow. Every creak of the floor felt like it would give me away. When I opened the door, the scent of incense and wax became overpowering. The candlelight painted shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. He was there, surrounded by hooded figures, children lying unconscious on stretchers, and a silence so dense it hurt my ears. What I witnessed cannot be described with ordinary words. Ritual gestures, whispered invocations that felt ancient, and the dreadful certainty that those children would never return to their families. I tried to step back quietly, but one of the figures saw me. They said nothing, only pointed toward a side corridor before vanishing into the darkness. My heart pounded wildly. I felt that every step toward the exit was being watched, controlled, as if the hospital itself refused to let me go. For days I couldn't focus on my rounds. Each time I walked through an empty corridor, I felt unseen eyes on me, and the whispers I once ignored now brushed against my ear. I decided to confront Moreira. I found him in his office, sitting behind his desk as if nothing had happened. He smiled with that calm, calculated expression that made my skin crawl and said, "Luis Fernando, some secrets are too great to be known. Not everyone born is meant to remain." I didn't respond. I just felt a cold shiver slide down my spine. That phrase carved itself into my mind like an echo that will never fade. After that encounter, everything changed. The nights grew longer, the hallways narrower, and every child admitted to the hospital seemed to bring with them an unbearable silence. I began recording everything in secret, photographing files, writing down names, dates, and schedules. But I knew a single mistake could cost me more than my career. It could cost my life. Then came the night I decided to flee with all the evidence. Everything was ready, copied files, photos hidden in my backpack. But as I tried to leave, the corridor seemed to multiply, bending into impossible angles, and the exit was always a little farther than I remembered. Whispering voices surrounded me, calling my name with both tenderness and threat. And then I saw him, Moreira, standing in front of me, as if he had been there all along, though I swore I had taken another route. His smile was serene, terrifying in its certainty. "You can't leave, Luis Fernando. Here, all the children of silence remain," he said, in a voice soft yet unbreakable. I don't remember how I returned to the on-call room. I don't know if I walked there myself or if the hospital brought me back. Everything looked the same, and yet nothing was. The lights flickered, the hallways echoed strangely, and I was exhausted, trembling, feeling that my escape had only been an illusion. Since then, every time I close my eyes, I see the corridors of the Tamaulipas hospital. I hear the whispers of the children who never returned, and I feel Moreira's gaze following me, even from afar. Sometimes I wonder if I truly escaped, or if, somehow, I'm still trapped inside the silent web of that hospital. I don't know, and maybe I never will. I can only tell the story, because the more I speak, the less it feels real, and the closer I feel to them, to the children of silence.